Hey guys, welcome back. So now brace yourselves, because we're getting back into Jason Aaron's Avengers, which has so much going on at the same time, which is why for this video, we're just going to focus on what's happening with Mephisto and the Council of Red, because some of the other things just in Avengers issue 750, they really gotta have their own video. Otherwise, you guys will probably get whiplash from the narration, if you haven't already got it from just reading the series so far. And with that said, let's get into it. But first, if you're new to the channel, be sure to subscribe to catch the spills every week. And don't forget to hit that bell up top so we can squat up in the comments for the first hour. Alright, so for this one, we're going to do quite a bit of jumping around, but I'm going to try to keep it as concise as possible, because there's also a lot to go over here. But initially jumping into this, we start off with Kazar, who essentially is Marvel's "we have Tarzan at home" type of character. But for Kazar, who had recently joined the Agents of Wakanda during Empire, with him helping the Avengers in the Savage Land at the time, but this had later then led to T'Challa sending Kazar as an agent of Wakanda on a time-traveling mission to gather information on the unknown history of Earth's legacy powers, which then sent him a million years back into the past, which, as it turns out, with Jason Aaron, this is the era of the Avengers 1 million BC. And prior to this point, the Avengers 1 million BC, they've mainly been dealing with Mephisto, but just before Kazar got sent on this mission, we had seen that the Avengers 1 million BC, they had been confronted by younger Thanos from an alternate future, back in Avengers issue 38 or Legacy issue 738. However you want to look at it. But at that time when we were shown this, it was really just to say that throughout countless years, Mephisto has been the Avengers' greatest enemy, and not so much to the case to where it's directly Mephisto every time, but in a number of cases, whether in the past, present, or the future, he has indirectly tried to take down the Avengers a number of times. And we're given examples of this with Mephisto making deals with Kid Thanos, with Apocalypse, with the Hulk, or with Doom the Living Planet, and he's made these different deals either with villains or in some cases heroes under the guise that he was giving them what they wanted. But of course with Mephisto, he was using all of them for his own interest, which is usually how Mephisto operates. But through the course of this, we were given the idea that he's been at this for billions of years prior to the present day, and from the present day, eons into the future. But also keep in mind, and we're gonna get back to the story in just a minute, but keep in mind, when we're talking about Jason Aaron and the future, Jason Aaron kinda has a future of his own that's going on, because as far as I'm concerned, his future is more of an alternate timeline, going eons into the future with Phoenix, Wolverine, and Doom being just crazy OP. So just keep that in mind. But as far as Mephisto's grand plan of making deals with different people to either break up the Avengers or take them down, eventually this had brought us to a time-traveling Kid Thanos, who was told by Mephisto that Earth would give him the one thing that he desires the most, because if there's one thing that Earth will be good at, it'll be death. But really it's around this time where we find the time-traveling Kazar from the present day getting dropped into the 1 million BC era. And initially when Kazar arrives, he finds himself running into Kid Thanos. And at this point for Kazar, who recently got an upgrade, I mean, if you want to call it that, with the whole death and resurrection thing that just gave him a connection to the Savage Land. But for Kazar in this moment, that ain't doing him no good. And even if they were there in the Savage Land, I doubt that this match between him and Kid Thanos would go any different, because Kid Thanos is wrecking this guy and he's getting ready to kill him. But then the Avengers 1 million BC, they then show up, saving Kazar from what most certainly was about to be his death. Because Kid Thanos really had this one in the bag, he really did. Kazar was about to be donezo. But from here, the Avengers 1 million BC, they quickly take down Kid Thanos, with the Phoenix chaining them up, Agamotto opening the portal, and Odin sending Kid Thanos through back to the time and place which he had came from. But with these Avengers from the past taking care of Thanos, you then get a moment to where Odin just blatantly disrespects Kazar, and he's more or less like, man, if this guy hiding in the bushes is the future of human civilization, then it's all downhill from here. But for Kazar at this point, his mission's complete, so he uses the time knife to take him home, which then leaves us with a moment between Odin and Phoenix, to where she's then like, oh, Odin's just being a bit grumpy, perhaps having another kid would help. And for Odin, that kind of talk from the Phoenix from there just has him all hot and bothered. But it's here after Kazar's left that we find that Dr. Doom has been watching this whole thing. And much like a number of the other examples that we've seen, this Doom is then approached by Mephisto. And Mephisto notices that this Doom is different, because he's seen other Dooms come to this point in time before, thinking that they could attack a more primitive world with their weapons from the future. But unlike the other villains and the other Dooms that Mephisto's seen, this Doom has just stood by and watched. But really quickly, this Doom tells Mephisto that he's very familiar with him as well. But in the case of this Doom, he claims that he's no ordinary Doom. He's the Doom Supreme, master of the darkest arts, and the Doom above all. which is something that'll more or less be proven as this whole thing plays out. But with him at least having experience with Mephisto, Doom just tells him to cut to the chase, because he knows Mephisto has some type of bargain, so he more or less just tells him to spit it out. And it's in this conversation where Mephisto lets Doom know that he's tried a number of times and in a number of ways to stop the Avengers before they could band together, but for some reason they always come out on top. And over the years, the number of heroes and hero teams, they're only gonna stack up in numbers, continue to grow, and just do the same thing. And it's for that reason where Mephisto tells Doom if it works for them, why not for us? How about we form a team of our own? Which from here leads into the creation of the new multiversal Masters of Evil, which gives us King Killmonger, the King of Kings, who had conquered both Wakanda and Asgard. But this also gives us the Black Skull, who's the Red Skull with the Venom Symbiote, who in his case we saw briefly during Heroes Reborn, but then we also get a Norman Osborn, Green Goblin, Ghost Rider mashup as well, along with Kid Thanos, who we'd seen before, and many more. But as far as the multiversal Masters of Evil, we'll touch on this a little bit more towards the end of this video, because the next issue starts off Avengers Death Hunters Part 1, while you also have the story continuing in Jason Aaron's 2022 Avengers Forever. But just after we see this conversation between Doom and Mephisto, we then jump back over to Kazar, who we find in mid-time jump making his way back to the present day, but while he's on his way back, he's then bombarded by a ton of time-seeking missiles, which knock him out of the time flow onto an unfamiliar planet while frying his time knife before he can reach the present day. And it's quickly that we find out that he was brought here intentionally by this huge armored stranger who tells Kazar that he's been prowling through history's dark secrets, and those secrets have noticed. But also this stranger, he lets Kazar know that he's not going to kill him, because if a time traveler kills another time traveler, that's one of the things that'll throw up a flag for the Deathlocks, and this guy's master has given him the task of trying to avoid that and keep the secrets of the past secret. But through the course of this fight, Kazar grabs his time knife, which is still pretty useful as a knife, who knew? And he knocks off the mask of this guy, revealing that it's Howard Stark of an alternate reality, who had became the Iron Inquisitor. And as soon as we see this, it then takes us into his origin, as well as the next reveal with his connection to the Council of Red. And it's here with his origin where we're taken to Earth 4111, and we're shown that this Howard Stark, he was also very successful. He had made more billions than any man in history. He had created S.H.I.E.L.D., he'd saved the world a few times, but for him, after studying the history of the Earth's greatest powers and the legacies that had shaped the planet throughout history, he believed that the Stark's name should be mentioned among the rest. But he knew that that was unlikely with him having a bad liver, he was getting older, and in his world, the Age of Miracles was just around the corner, with a number of mutants, immortals, and superhumans soon to step in, to where then after he's gone, he will be long forgotten. But this led this Howard Stark to making a deal with Mephisto, which Howard thought that this deal would play out like any other deal that he's made on his way to making billions, but that experience of being savvy and making the deal work out in his favor, it definitely didn't help him here, because as part of his deal with Mephisto, which was to ensure that the Stark name lives on, this was done by Mephisto stopping Howard from aging, but in return, this Howard killed his son Tony Stark, which at the time he looked at as the price for immortality. But also with making this deal, it costed him his fortunes, his business, and in exchange, though he would live forever, he would continue his days as a slave to Mephisto, as Hell's armorer, and as the Iron Inquisitor, the chief security officer of the Council of Red. And with the Council of Red, we had talked about them briefly during Heroes Reborn and Heroes Return, because through the course of those stories, it was really Mephisto from the 616 universe giving a demonstration to 615 other Mephistos as far as what just one of them could do with changing their own reality. And even though at that time it seemed like Phil Coulson had failed, and I mean more or less he did, but 616 Mephisto flipped this around for the purpose of bringing the Council of Red together and inspiring each and every one of them to more or less do the same thing. But also with how this is done, well, we get a bit of a teaser towards the notion of 616 Mephisto possibly scamming these other 615 Mephistos as well, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. But as far as Kazar's encounter with the Iron Inquisitor, once again, this Howard Stark, he's not trying to kill Kazar, at least not directly, but instead, once he gets him out of the time stream and onto this planet, he's then more or less like, well, did my job, I'm out. And right after that, we find out that this Howard Stark had left Kazar here because this world was about to get consumed by Galactus, which really was the Iron Inquisitor's way of killing Kazar without killing him. But this is one of those things to where we later then find out that Kazar actually didn't die here. But instead, as it turned out, he ended up making a deal with Galactus and becoming his herald. And we also find that with Kazar, that he's very much the Norrin Radd type of herald, because he's constantly leading Galactus to planets that are uninhabited, while also entertaining his own side quests along the way. But after this, jumping back to 1 million BC in the 616 universe, and it's here in this moment where we find Doom returning after assembling his team, to where then also we discover the terms of the agreement between Mephisto and Doom. And it's here where we find that Mephisto claims that the Council wants to save Earth 616 for last. And with Doom hearing this, he's just like, yeah, okay, whatever, that's not bad, because he doesn't care what order they go in. But for Mephisto, with him making this request along with the Council of Reds, who collectively do have their own plan, but with him doing this, I can't help but think that this is going to benefit 616 Mephisto and end badly for the other 615 Mephistos. And I can't help but think that because we're talking about Mephisto here. Come on. And for him, that may be intentional, or it may be something he's just doing to cover himself. But I can't help but think that there's something a little extra there. But just after this, we then jump over to Earth 818, where we find that the Masters of Evil, they nearly succeeded at just slaughtering the entire roster of the Avengers 1 million BC, with their Odin being one of the last men standing. And I'll admit, at this point here, it leads for a pretty sick story going into Avengers Forever, because when we see this Odin go out in a blaze of glory, when the Masters of Evil's Dark Phoenix just lets down fire on this guy, there's a couple things that happen here that set us up for what's to come as far as Earth 818. Because as Phoenix is just flaming him, Kid Thanos then cuts in and he's like, no, I told you guys I get to kill all the Odins, and that's when he then blasts Odin, presumably killing him. But then also here, when this Earth 818 Ghost Rider is killed, this is seen by Robbie Reyes all the way on Earth 616, with the last thing that he heard was this chilling laugh through that other Ghost Rider as he saw the other Avengers of 1 million BC get slaughtered. And even though Robbie doesn't know who or what's doing this, or whose laugh he heard just before this dream ended, but with him seeing the portions that he did, we find that it's a precursor to his multiversal vengeance being initiated. But just after this, we find the Masters of Evil, who at this point have done a number of travels, and even to the point to where some of them have just lost count. But at this time, we find them arriving on Earth 616, with them discovering that the Deathlocks have arrived here, and Doom telling these guys that they gotta hunt them down. But as soon as they get here, they're greeted by Orb, who's just running at the mouth on how he's a big fan and how he's seen so much, and because he has the Eye of the Watcher from Original Sin. And he just runs down the list of these guys like, oh, you're Supreme Doom, the Doom above all. And you're Dark Phoenix with her pet Berserker, King of Kings, King Killmonger, Black Skull, Ghost Goblin. Like, he's completely fanning out on the Masters of Evil, because Orb, he's pretty sick himself anyway. But when he gets here, it's hardly seconds that pass before these guys just kill Orb. And I mean, it could have been like a minute or two, but it was quick. And Orb was kind of like, man, well, I should have seen that coming. And in all honesty, he really should have. But with the Masters of Evil removing the Eye of the Watcher from Orb, he had believed that they were taking it so that they could use it to their benefit, but Doom was more or less like it's of no use to them. Because one, this Doom, he's never been one to just watch, but also, aside from these guys hunting Deathlocks, they plan on rewriting the history of the 616 as well. And it's for that reason that Doom doesn't believe that the Eye of the Watcher would be needed. But with time, we'll find that he has a bit of a change of heart, because when you're dealing with Mephisto, all information is important information, and especially when it's 616 Mephisto and a 616 Eye of the Watcher. Like, come on. But we'll talk about how exactly that pans out later when we pick back up with the series. And so now real quick, I want to give a special shout out to all the patrons. Thank you guys for all of your support, and for anyone who's new here who wants more information on how to support the channel, I got a link below so you can go to patreon.com/dopespill. But that'll do it for this one, guys. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below, and we'll do it again on the next one. Alright, later.